the goal. Back here in the studio, it's time for us to set the agenda for today's conversation. We're talking about electricity, power supply, the industry generally, service deliverables, and all of the new developments, especially following that announcement by the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. Tariffs are going up and subsidies are also in play as the federal government is set to bear the burden following last week's announcement. So there's a variety of issues that we're going to navigate through in this conversation today. And to help us do all of that, we're joined by Dr. Abubakar Atiku Tambol. Dr. Tambol is former managing director of Transmission Company of Nigeria, known as TCN. He's also on the board of the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, AEDC, Director in Data Analytics and Solutions Limited, and Associate Professor in the Department of Electronics and Electrical Engineering at the Usman Danfodio University. So who best to speak to than Dr. Abubakar Atiku? Thank you very much, Doctor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome on the program.
Thank you.
For most Nigerians, this is one of those issues that continues to, keep Nigerians perplexed about what the problems is. We try so many reforms, so many approaches over the years, but it leaves much to be desired in the electricity sector, especially when it comes to satisfaction of the end user. Give me your take on, first of all the reforms that has been put in place to guarantee, service delivery to the Nigerian public, but also to make the industry profitable, so much so that this privatization efforts that we've put in place over the past few years can actually take off.
Thank you. Power sector, as we are all witnessing, has really gone through a lot of reforms, right from the Power Sector Reform Act in 2005 to the current Electricity Act, which was signed into law. The reform that was initiated in 2005 actually saw to the privatization of PHCN into successor companies, with TCN being left out under the government purview. Distribution companies and generation companies were privatized. Of course, some of the generating companies are under concessions, like the hydros. They were not sold off. So government is still holding about 40% stake in equity in these privatized entities. So government has a role as well to play. It's not just it is giving it away to private investors, but it also has a role to play, and it has been it has been contributing and doing what it should to ensure that power delivery to Nigerian is sustained. Be that as it is, what we have witnessed is really not what we expected as a result of this privatization. Some will argue that if that has not taken place, probably the same funding that has been expended by government under the privatization regime was actually injected into PHCN. Under the same PHCN, we could have been in a better position. But that is just it's history now.
And Doctor, being an insider, knowing what you know about the power sector, about the privatization efforts, about the reforms, about the challenges that exist, if you can summarize the key issues at play as to why we're unable to, make a turnaround that Nigerians can really feel like, okay, something good is really happening, what would you say?
Well, I will say first of all that we are still in a situation whereby we cannot satisfy our electricity demand. That is, we are still having gaps in generation. Even though what we are capable of generating is almost 14,000 megawatts, but you see that we are all stagnated at maximum 5,000 megawatts. This is due to many factors, from the production, gas delivery from the generating stations. We are not having adequate energy mix. Some of the sources, we have abandoned them. We have coal. It has not been utilized. We have other sources of energy, like nuclear, which has not been even explored. And worldwide, it's one of those power sources that give guaranteed supply. So all this has not been fully exploited. The one that we are relying upon, that is the gas and hydros, we have not really been able to maximize the benefits. So this is one issue which is still lingering. We need to reinforce our generation in whatever way we could. And government, I know, has tried through the Niger Delta Power Holding Company. A lot of generating stations were set up during Obasanjo regime. Some of them are still not operational. They are idle, not to full capacity, because they are not having sufficient gas for which they are supposed to use as their feedstock. So these are issues which has to be addressed by having a serious investment in generation. So we know that at present there is 700 megawatt, which was has started operating in Zungeru. So these are the kind of things that we need from the government side. And we also have to reinforce our renewables, solar and wind, which we have in abundance. So all these are things which have been addressed in the new Electricity Act. There is a lot of opportunities for these new renewable energies to be incorporated to reinforce the generation. Then when you come to the other aspect, which are also the value chain, transmission, even if we generate that 14,000 megawatts, transmission cannot successfully evacuate it to the end users. Right. We have issues there which has to be addressed, even though government is still in control, but the funding needed there is enormous. It has to look,
Is it about expansion or dilapidated infrastructure?
Dilapidated infrastructure is one in which a lot of them has maybe stayed for more than 40, 50 years, and they cannot serve the purpose for which they are. So they need to be replaced. And there is also supposed to be expansion, so that we know distribution is also expanding in terms of demand. We have a lot of industries springing up, domestic buildings and other users is on the increase. So we have to be prepared and ready for that expansion. So that is why we need to expand the national grid to be able to cope. So when you come to distribution, that is where I think, to me, the major issue lies, because that's where the revenue or the liquidity of the sector is realized. So once you get it wrong there, then everything will not be in position, as it is supposed to be. So distribution has been also abandoned. It has not been fully fortified by the successor companies, by the private companies that took over. Most of them had not added a single injection substation since the time they took.
Right. And if we go back, looking at the triangle, generation, transmission, distribution, these are the main key players in the conversation we're having right now. Sure. You talk about the issues regarding generation. What have you seen so far that would suggest that we're working towards addressing those gaps within generation, transmission, and then distribution? Because when it comes to distribution, there are issues around metering. Sure. Significantly, most households are not metered today, and that is also a part of the problem. So what are your thoughts about efforts that are being made to address these gaps that you've identified today? Yeah,
well, talking about generation, even though we know some of those companies, like Egbin, like Transcorp, they have increased their capacity. Mainstream too has increased their capacity compared to what they have taken over. So we still need to do more. Like I said earlier, this issue it should not be left alone to the private sector. Government also has to come in terms of reimposing the generation, particularly, like I said, our hydro resources. We have abundant. Look at the issue of Mambila, which has been lingering. If we were serious, we were really focused on getting it ready, we would have gotten up to 1,500.
You say the political will to do that is not there, because there's a lot of lip service about these projects, but zero action, to say the least.
Yeah, I think so. I think we need a seriousness on part of the government to address this issue, to make it happen. There are a lot of ways in which this can be developed. We don't have to cop out the money. There could be a lot of PPP, a lot of investors who are willing to come in and play their part so that this Mambila can be realized. So I think now that we're almost over with the issue of litigations hanging around that, I think the government should really address it squarely, because it's one of the saviors, one of the things that can help us out in terms of generation.
And in talking about this announcement from last week, it's a bit of a mixed reaction from industry observers and Nigerians alike, with the hike in the tariff or electricity tariff, and then we understand that the federal government is also going to bear the burden by subsidizing it going up. For a lot of people, it's almost counterproductive. It's almost as if you're saying Nigerians have to pay cost-reflective tariff, but also the government is, on the other hand, trying to subsidize it, which, defeats the idea that, this industry can stand on its own, because we can actually make a good business out of it. As someone who understands this industry very well, what do you make of this new position?
Well, first of all, in my own opinion, I will commend the government for really thinking it wise to come in with the subsidy. When you look at the issue of petroleum subsidy, we're all witnessing what is happening and the hardship that you and me is experiencing. So government, in its wisdom, in that it is not proper to right now, because there has been agitation since July. We in the distribution sector, we have been agitating for cost-reflective tariff, for increase, and government said no. And I think the measure it has taken is to really make it easy for the citizens to be able to pay the present tariff, which is not cost-reflective. The cost-reflective tariff, which you are saying, is the one that you and me are supposed to pay. For example, it's now pegged at about 120 naira per unit or per kilowatt hour, while what we are paying is in the average of 68, 70 naira per kilowatt hour. So if we are to pay 120, you can imagine the hardship coupled to the petroleum cost and then electricity cost. Life will be miserable for Nigerians. So, and on the other hand, the electricity value chain has to operate, has to be in a position that it can sustain itself. And the only way is to have a cost-reflective tariff, which will take care of all the indices, all the macroeconomic parameters that are needed to be able to generate a unit of electricity.
Yeah, but do you think that this government subsidy is enough to address the liquidity crisis in the sector?
It's not enough, but it will cushion some of it. For example, this subsidy that is being brought over, being paid by government, is not actually given for free to the distribution companies. No, it is just a shortfall in this tariff that government is paying. And this one will go into the payment of electricity, whereby all stakeholders in the value chain will benefit from this tariff. That will guarantee generation to be paid 100%. because it used feedstock, gas feedstock, and other things to generate. So they have to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at the experience of the fuel subsidy regime itself, I mean, we still have a lot of backlogs of unpaid monies, whether it's with the NNPCL that the government is yet to pay back over the past 2-3 quarters before its removal officially by the Tinubu administration. What are the chances that the electricity subsidy that we're talking about right now could face the same challenge, because we know that the government is cash-strapped at the moment, is looking for money from different quarters?
Well, you're right, but I want to be optimistic that since government has committed itself to payment of this shortfall in tariff or the subsidy, that will still be realizable. It's going to be inputted into the budget, and probably the implementation of the budget will guarantee the payment of this subsidy. But I know, and you know, that this is not sustainable. It is for this year, 2024. Definitely, it will be withdrawn in the long run. And then you and me should be ready to pay the price, the proper price for electricity.
And when you say the proper price, break it down to Nigerians who are struggling to understand why it costs so much for energy in this country.
Well, in a layman's language, I would say consider yourself as the owner of a generator. You all own one form of generator or the other. What do we need to sustain that electricity? First of all, that generator has to be fit and proper. You have to maintain it. You have to service it. And secondly, the running cost, you have to buy the petrol or diesel to sustain it. So this is just what is happening in the generation sector. They all need this funding to be able to generate electricity. And they have to be paid not by government, not by everybody, but by the end user, by customers who use this electricity. It's out of this payment or the tariff you pay that this aspect will be paid back to generation company to sort these issues. The transmission too, they are not going to transmit the power from the generating station to the end user, to the bulk users for free. They also have staff, they also have to maintain their infrastructure, so they are being paid wheeling charges. And when it comes to distribution too, where they do the collection, they also have their own equipment infrastructure to maintain, and they have the staff to pay. So all these are expenses which are within the value chain that has to be addressed entirely by the tariff. So this tariff structure is set such that every participant in the value chain is paid for the services it rendered.
And in talking about the metering, because that in itself would give an indication of how well our coverage area is doing, and how much money can be generated, because we talk about estimated billing as being also a part of the problem. And these are some of the gaps that need to be addressed. As far as metering is concerned, the NERC is saying that we're not doing particularly very well. The Ikeja Distribution Company is the only one that has significantly done well over the past few years, recording about 72.43% in terms of metering. What are the challenges there, especially for Nigerians who say, listen, with meters, we can be a lot more responsible with our power consumption because we know that we're going to have, cost-reflective tariff to deal with, so we can manage our consumptions well. But when it comes to estimated billing, whether or not we enjoy the power supply, we get billed anyway, and it doesn't look fair. What are your thoughts about some of those gaps and how fast we need to address them? Because so many promises have been made over the past few years about the mass metering project, and not much, has been realized as a result.
Yes, on the issue of metering, what I have to say is that the major issue that is facing the industry is funding. These meters has to be procured, and the investment is huge. And it is expected that distribution companies also have some level of capital injected into metering. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And what
purchased by who? Just so we're clear. The meters purchased by
by
who?
distribution companies. They are supposed to purchase it, and because a customer is actually not supposed to pay. So since they are not able to do it, government in its wisdom has come up with programs like Nigerian mass metering, National Mass Metering Scheme, whereby it is procured from a facility with the central bank and then given to distribution companies on loan, because they are supposed to pay back CBN that amount of fund that each distribution company took in terms of the meters allocated to them. And this is supposed to be paid over time, not immediately by distribution companies, and whereby distribution companies feel that they can also have their own program or through vendor financing to purchase and also pay their vendors in a way they could. That is another thing. And then the meter access providers are there who customers who are willing to pay can pay for the meters and get back their money in terms of energy. And we also know that this tariff we are talking about also has an element of metering in it. Some amount is being factored in and being kept for the distribution companies to use it either as security to go and borrow from banks to procure the meters, or if the money is enough for them, they can use it to procure the meters.
Do you think electricity distribution companies are committed towards this mass metering project? Because for the most part, a lot of the criticism is that, listen, some of them do enjoy the estimated billing, and that's why they're not willing to move customers to the mass metering project.
Well, that's the general view, but to me, who is an insider, I know in Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, we are really against estimated billing because NEC has what it called capped estimate. So a customer should not be billed more than certain amount. And if we have sufficiently good supply, we are going to lose because the amount we are going to charge that customer will be significantly lower than what he consumed. So we are really not for it. So that is why a lot of efforts is being made to ensure that we meter our customers. But some, I mean, especially those in the cities, I mean, whereby you live, because the estimation is also based on the average consumption of an area where you live. So you could have a very higher estimate as the cap billing. So for those areas, you definitely, those in the neighborhood will experience higher billing compared to those where we have low supply of electricity.
Now we understand that distribution companies are in negotiations with generation companies so that they can get sort of a direct access. We used to have, we still have NBET, the bulk purchasing trader that pulls in and then basically, What does this mean, and is this a good move in the long run to address some of these gaps that we're talking about in the electricity sector?
Yeah, I think in normal electricity market, that is the best way to go. We don't need MBET. MBET, as it was established, is a stopgap. It is a temporary measure for the generation companies to guarantee that whatever they generate and push into the system, they are being paid for it. And knowing that we are in a state whereby the efficiency of the market is not good enough to guarantee 100% payment back to generation companies. That is why MBET was plotted, it was funded, and to ensure that they now provide that difference that we are unable to provide in terms of settling the generation companies. So, like I said, it is not a permanent thing, And NEC has, I think from last year, started with 3 companies, one company, ADC, Ikeja, and ECHO, as a test case, and it has been operated, and the experience shows that it is a better way, because whatever you take, you pay for it 100%.
Isn't that what you do with NBET?
Yeah, no, what we do is NBET is that most of the distribution companies, we pay at their own will, because they feel that somebody is there to cover them. So they pay the market 30%, 40% of what they consume. Now it is a different thing with this new arrangement. You go and sign a contract with the generation companies to pay them. So at the end of the month, you are obliged to pay them 100% what you have consumed. So you can.
I mean, in the 2024 budget, NBET has in its subsidy plan just over 450 billion naira, and with this subsidy regime that we're talking about right now, as a result of the new tariff, the estimation is that the government is going to need a lot more money to offset the extra cost that it will take to pay for the subsidy. But what role do you see NBET playing going forward, especially with this, as distribution companies are now in direct negotiation with GENCOs now? The middleman is, quote-unquote, being sidelined now. What role do you see NBET playing in the near future?
Okay, like I said earlier, NBET is just a stopgap. It is not supposed to be permanent. We don't need NBET going forward. With this arrangement, once all the distribution companies sign their own contract with generation companies, what is the role of NBET? NBET is virtually out. So it is spaced out. I'm even surprised that you said a certain amount has been budgeted for it in this. Maybe to offset what has the liabilities before. But to me, once you have started this new regime, NBET does not need any money from anybody, because it's virtually technically out of the game.
And looking at what Nigerians who are really concerned about this, there are some who have voiced, their concern that listen, we're still not out of the woods yet. Even with the new tariff, even with discos making a lot more money, that there are still some signs that in the near future the industry might not survive the shocks, especially with expansion and all of the challenges around dilapidated infrastructure and so on and so forth. What do you foresee as some of the next challenges that we need to think of ahead, even with all the structural rearrangements that is being undertaken right now?
Well, I think what needs to be done is, first of all, to strengthen the regulatory aspect of the industry. NEC has to be more empowered if it feels it is not in a position to carry out its function as it is. So once NEC is up and doing, I'm sure all the industry players will sit up and make sure that they play according to the game. Generation companies must be reinforced. Like I said earlier, we don't have to rely on their own expansion. Government also has to see how it can move the generation forward. Transmission should be also reformed, as the minister informed, into 2 segments as enshrined by the Electricity Act, TSP and ISO, to provide a better way of doing business over in transmission, and it should also be properly funded through grants, through the appropriation, since it is still under government. And distribution companies must also live up to expectations. They have to expand, because we rely heavily on delivery of power to the customers. If customers are not satisfied, they will not pay. So a lot needs to be done, and the regulatory aspect too. Any distribution company that is not up and doing according to the key performance indicators, it should be sanctioned appropriately.
It's akin to asking you to judge yourself in a court of law, but speaking for some Nigerians who have aired their views on this one and who have been left disappointed with the performance of the discos, do you think that that is justified? That some of them, if not most of them, are not pulling their weight?
Yeah. An example is what has just happened in Kaduna Disco, which has really just been taken over and reorganized in terms of the management and the board structure. So these are the kind of actions we expect from NEC as a regulator. It's just like a bank. Instead of CBN to allow bank to collapse with people,
goes into administration.
Yeah, they go in and take the necessary measures. So I think NEC should be up and doing and ensure that distribution companies or generation companies or whoever is in the electricity value chain sit up and do what is supposed to.
And if you can speak to the consumer right now, with this new tariff hike and also with the government subsidy, is it safe to say that they're not going to feel the heat of this new tariff?
Obviously, they are not going to feel the heat of the tariff because government has stepped in to prevent that escalation.
So nothing changes as far as...
Well, what will change is the fact that generation companies will be having they will be paid 100%. They will be able to expand. They will be able to provide electricity as we need it, maybe improve and get it well above 10,000 and above. So if they are sure and they are getting their funding, I think that is feasible. And
now you can talk about all of the negotiations and the red tapes being removed, the middleman, NBET being removed, discos talking to Gencos, but there is also the elephant in the conversation, which is the infrastructure that we talked about, that are either dilapidated or that have not expanded enough, that even if we are able to generate X amount of electricity, we still don't have the infrastructure to do that. Do you think that with this new reviews and reforms that have been undertaken, that there's a plan that suggests that we're also investing heavily in that area? Because according to data from the TCN, it only achieved 28% of its expected capex from 2013 to 2020. The wholly government-owned entity only spent 181 billion naira on investment in capital projects, as against the projected 655 billion naira during the period, which you would know, in terms of the performance. So there is still so much in the infrastructure space that we've not done that would guarantee these service deliverables that you're talking about.
Yeah, a lot, like I said earlier, has been done. Look at the Siemens project. Siemens something. A government has really come in to expand and to make sure that they replace all the dilapidated equipment and lines, particularly for transmission side. Even distribution company, which are private, with these initiatives, they're also going to be taken care of so that they can be able to deliver and to power to the customers. So I think the aspect also of the Electricity Act that has been in place, which empowers state governments to have their own regulatory, their own laws, is also very good because it will attract investors. Right now, I know I'm witness, Jigawa state government has started by inviting investors who are willing to come in and provide like 100 megawatt of solar power to them. And then it is a matter of having appropriate tariff over there that will guarantee return on the investment for the investors.
And do you think the setup is there where we can have an off-grid, sort of like the solar energy, for instance, connected to our national grid, so that we're not creating channels outside of the system, but there's something that can also be embedded within the system, especially when you talk about power?
Yeah, like you said, the mini grids are there, and that is the essence. If like 100 megawatt is generated in Jigawa, it may not finish it. What Jigawa needs, the maximum is 55 megawatt. So what happened to the 45 megawatt?
Right.
That one can be injected into the grid through the transmission, while what they need can be localized there on a 33 kV feeder. So there is this possibility of having these mini grids, captive generations coming in different states, different parts of the country. That is what we need, so that all the suppressed loads we are having will now come back into the system. So some of those industries which require power, steady power, they are not getting. With this mini grids and captive generation, they should be able to meet their demands and improve on the goods and services, and Nigerians will enjoy the benefit of that.
So many Nigerians, they have every right to be cautiously optimistic about some of these plans, some of these reforms, these new regulations and things like that. We've had our hopes dashed over the years with all the promises that have been made from the Obasanjo administration, all the privatization efforts that we've seen over the past 2 decades that has left much to be desired. Why are you optimistic about the near future, looking at all of these new efforts that have been put in place?
Well, I'm optimistic because I'm seeing positive and good commitment from the government in terms of pushing these things. I think the political will has changed. Government is willing, and even we in the private sector, the distribution sectors, generation sectors, we're all willing to play our own role. So I'm sure in the near future, we should be able to address all these challenges.
Okay, let's hope that there will be light at the end of this tunnel. But by these rules, discos have gotten the approval from the NEC, the NERC, and is expected to engage in stakeholder engagements, interactions, and of course they are also required to review the prices of electricity to account for changes in factors such as inflation, exchange rate, gas prices, and generation capacity. Let's talk about what kind of communication the discos are having with communities, with stakeholders in the industry, so that we're all on the same page. And what guarantees are there that the end user, the Nigerian customer out there, the one who is going through the economic challenges right now, is being looked after? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that everybody is represented and everybody has a voice. And for the most part, Nigerians, the households, are the ones that don't usually get a say in some of these conversations.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to start with, the tariff, that is what is called MITO, Multi-Year Tariff Order, which has been set up by NEC and being implemented by the distribution companies. This one specifies that each year, the tariff will have a minor change twice in a year. And these minor changes will not significantly affect the tariff. But the major reviews, like which has been done now, which has been shouldered by government in terms of subsidy, customers are not going to feel the impact. So with this, there is no need for any stakeholder engagement. But if we are to charge that cost-reflective tariff, customers has to be engaged. We have customer consultative committees, and also methodologies to engage customers if any tariff review is going to happen. Customers, each distribution company will gather its customers either through representation or whatever to inform them of the plan to increase the tariff with the reasons given to them, so that they agree mutually that yes, it is time and it is reasonable to have this increase in tariff. So these are the steps that must be taken to ensure that customers are carried along and they are aware. And they should also be told what are the benefits of having this tariff increase. The benefits such as increase in their metering, they will be metered instead of having estimated billing. Customers will be happy with this kind of engagement and being told what they stand to
And
gain.
I know that, in these engagements, it does appear democratic. You're getting feedback from the people who are your customers, who are the reason why you're still in business and things like that. How much does that feedback translates to what comes out as a reviewed tariff or reviewed operational procedure, for instance? Or do you just listen to the feedback and take it under advisement?
No, when you can have that kind of interaction and you have feedbacks, there are two issues. Actually, customers is either he is not being supplied or
they always
he's
say
not
the customer is
meeting.
right.
Yes,
Is the
so
customer
we have
right
to
in
now
this?
look at that and see how can we address it. And the only way we can address it is to use that feedback we have from them to provide more transformers to ensure that they get steady and qualitative supply, and ensure that also they are metered. Also, where there is outrageous, crazy billing, we get it corrected.
Yeah, and we've had several cases where communities have had to purchase their own transformers. I know some of these issues are case-by-case basis, where you have some discos that don't allow customers to pay for their own transformers, and you have some discos that are guilty of, saying to communities, listen, these transformers are not something we can just get off the shelf. There's a whole process before we get them. Talk to your, political leaders. They might help facilitate some of these things. And for the most part, there's this feeling that discos get away with, not doing the right thing. For instance, to put things in place, whether it's providing meters or providing transformers, or when there's an expansion, are people supposed to pay for their own cables, supposed to pay for their own poles and things like that? What is the industry standard right now, and what are the guarantees that discos are going to be held accountable when it comes to playing their own part?
Well, there is standard procedure, as you said. If, for example, you as an individual, you want your supply fortified, you want to have a transformer, is allowed. So we call that dedicated transformer. That one, you have to pay for it 100% and put it into your premises.
As an individual?
As an individual. But again, if it is for the public, that responsibility is 100% in terms of procurement, the maintenance, and everything on the distribution company. So that's why even the minister has made a public statement that henceforth, no distribution company should ask customers to buy transformer, to repair transformer. And I have a case, someone just 2 days ago in Jabi Estate, they have a transformer. I don't know whether it is public or it is being installed by the estate agent, but it is faulty and they have to pay money to get it repaired. After some time, it failed. And then they were asked to pay 2 million. When it came to me, I called the management of Abuja. I said, why don't you ask them to buy a new transformer? If you're asking them for 300 kVA to pay 2 million for repairs, that is wrong. And they are now taking action on it, and they have to take full responsibility of repairing of that transformer or replacing it. So that is the responsibility of the distribution company to do it.
And we did talk about some of the minor reviews year in, year out, but also according to the new rules, we're going to have every 5 years reviews will be conducted, and that will be the standardized practice right now, where all inputs will be reviewed in consultation with stakeholders, while the minor reviews are done biannually, which you have just stated right now. But to wrap up the conversation, while all these projections are still there, there's a possibility that something could go wrong, especially when it comes to financing. And we did talk about the liquidity crisis within the sector right now, and you would know a lot more about that liquidity crisis. The performance of this current regime right now depends on availability of funds from the government to offset from its own side, the subsidy regime that it is saying that, listen, because we understand what Nigerians are going through, we're not going to let them feel the impact of this new tariff. The government is going to offset whatever comes in as an increment from the current tariff regime. Give me a sense of what could go wrong and what we need to do to prevent it, especially looking at stabilizing the performance of the industry.
Well, with all this that you have said, the subsidy provided by the government and everything, that is not the end of the matter. What really matters is payment for this electricity and improving the efficiency of the distribution company in terms of collection. The losses, ATC and C is there in excess of 40%, in which the standard is shouldn't exceed 15%. So with this, no matter the amount of subsidy or the tariff increase, will still be in the same situation. So what is expedient on us is, first of all, we in the distribution sector to ensure that we operate near optimally in terms of efficiency. Our billing efficiency is improved, which is now average of 60, which means 40% of the energy is not billed, so you cannot even collect it until you bill before you collect.
And that kind of loss is significant.
It's a huge amount. So unless we're able to close that gap, we will not get anywhere. So that is what we need to do. And on the part of the customers, we have to be patriotic to pay for what we consume. Also, to avoid electricity theft and a lot of wrongdoings in the network. Vandalism is there, which is drawing us back. It's moving 2 steps forwards, 3 backward. So we need to address all these issues in order for the system to be liquid enough and for the efficiency of the system to really come up.
Well, one step at a time. Hopefully, this is a step in the right direction. We're going to have to leave it here for now. Dr. Abubakar Atiku Tambuwal is the former managing director of Transmission Company of Nigeria. He also is on the board of the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, director in Data Analytics and Solution Limited, and associate professor in the Department of Electronics and Electrical Engineering at the Usman Danfodio University. Doctor, thank you most kindly for joining us on the program this morning. Really appreciate your insight and expert analysis.
My pleasure. You're welcome.
Time to look at the front pages of some select national dailies to bring you up to speed with the latest news stories and the headlines of the day. As usual, we'll start with a look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today, Monday, January 22nd, 2024. All right. At the very top, a reminder that the 21st Daily Trust Dialogue is coming up this week, Thursday, and some of the headliners are there. The Minister of the Economy, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Minister of Finance, Wale Edun is there. The NLC President, Joe Ajero, is there, and also the immediate past President of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, alongside a variety of others. The African of the Year Award will also be presented on that day. But the big story of the day on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper is Arewa Consultative Forum rejects relocation of CBN and FAN offices as the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria. It says it's mobilizing top northerners against the move. Is this crying over spilled milk? Well, more on that on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper for today. Nabiha's sisters' freedom. Police, family disagree. What is this disagreement about? Do some further reading, but I think the most important point is that the girls are back. Other victims also recently abducted in different parts of Abuja have been returned after ransom payment. But if you do want to read the different accounts of both the family members and the Nigerian police, available for you on page 24. 16 passengers die in Zaria-Kano highway crash. Very tragic incident. The details available on page 6. Electricity subsidy. Federal government pays over 5 trillion naira in 10 years, or paid over 5 trillion naira in 10 years from electricity subsidy. We just finished the conversation around that just moments ago. Well, that's it on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today. Let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper for today, shall we? The Punch newspaper for today. Very interesting stories there. And it starts with this one. Dangote Refinery plans supply of 150,000 Ipman stations. Okay. 150,000 Ipman stations. So that is part of the agreement. I mean, last week we had a conversation with the president of Ipman, and they seem to have come to an arrangement with the Dangote Refinery about the supply system, and 150,000 of those stations have been identified by Dangote. Foreign medical school bills gulped $1.58 billion in 6 months. So this is just the capital flight that we're worried about, that we've been talking about, and this is coming from the Apex Bank, and it should know what it is saying. 1.5 billion in just 6 months, paying for tuition fees and medical bills. Imagine if that money stayed in the Nigerian economy. Just imagine. More on that on page 11. Tinubu panel asks states to suspend low revenue taxes. That is also a story you can find on page 11. Kidnapping epidemic. Banks enabling rapid growth of abduction industry. Well, that's very indicting. According to experts, pages 2, 4, and 5 has all the details. Nigerians demand more from Tinubu. Security chiefs. Abuja family confirms ransom payment. And these are pictures as goods destroyed as fire guts 10-story building in Lagos. It's a market building, and unfortunately this happened over the weekend. A lot more needs to be done about our emergency services and also the prevention mechanisms that need to be put in place to ensure that these buildings have the necessary facilities that can contain some of these disasters. NSCDC says it foiled 48 bandit attacks on schools, according to their Commandant General. I hope they get to do more now that the schools are back in session. Benin Ore expressway kidnappers freed my father after 3 million naira ransom, according to the Sun. Also available on page 4 and 5. Forensic probe of Ibadan blast to determine next action, according to the government, as they continue to look at some of these developments regarding what happened in Bodija this past week. First News is up next. The big story: over 5,000 Nigerians languishing in Benin Republic prisons. Ohaneze Youth Council says alleges extrajudicial killings, harassment, maltreatment, undue detention. Claims young Nigerians held in 13 different prisons in Benin Republic. Our 19-day experience in kidnappers' captivity freed Abuja sisters, and it's just going to be horrific tales. And we talk about the psychosocial support that is needed, and these girls and any other captive, they need this, because they need to find a way to deal with, the aftershocks of that horrific incident that would probably change your life forever. About an explosion, over 90% of victims discharged from hospitals, according to Governor Makinde. Discloses 230 houses marked for structural tests. Kidnappers release more Abuja residents, and federal government delegation to visit scene today. Why is it taking so long in regards to that Ibadan explosion? Let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper for today then, shall we? Skepticism over inflation, insecurity, and economic outlook. Performance of selected African currencies against dollar in the past 1 year. Nigeria depreciated by 49%. And you can see a breakdown there of all of the information as a result of that. And that in itself tells a clear picture of how well or badly the Naira is doing regarding the performance against other African currencies. It is saying that the Naira is down by 28, or rather inflation is up by 28.92%. So it also tells you that the Naira is not doing particularly very well. Leadership hustle, or rather leadership huddles for opposition parties' mega merger structure. And I think that is part of the editorial on the Guardian newspaper for today. Court orders CBN to release MTN's funds repatriation details. Stop Akpabio Abbas from increasing budget, Serap tells court. Averting catastrophe of brain drain in the health sector. That is also on the editorial page of the Guardian newspaper. Theft drops by 82% as 1.2 billion naira OML 17 production hits 40,000 barrels per day. Niger Delta youths to shut flow stations, cut crude oil output. Okay, one hand we're having some good news, on the other hand there is some bad news with regards to activities of militants in the Niger Delta. Falana urges states to abolish pension payment to ex-governors. It is morally wrong, economically not viable, and politically just suspect. Because these people, after 4 or 8 years in government, are capable of taking care of themselves, and unfortunately, we still give them, so much money after their years in service. I think Fashola was just speaking recently in one of the programs on one of the national stations, and he was talking about getting paid 577,000 naira monthly as his pension. And I know that he doesn't need it. Two-time governor, two-time minister of the federal government. I doubt if he needs that, pension money, but, it's money. So people mostly don't say no if you're giving them free money at the end of the day. All right, let's get to some of the analysis now and navigate some of the big stories making the headlines this morning. Join us to analyze the news is Suleiman Ubagaya. He's the CEO of Sky Limit Media Group, editor and former president, deputy president, Nigeria Guild of Editors, is joining us as usual this beautiful Monday morning to analyze some of the top stories. Good morning to you, and thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank you also for having me.
Right. Okay, let's talk about what is clearly scratching the heads of the Arewa Consultative Forum. They're not particularly happy about this relocation moves. Some of the CBN departments are being moved back to Lagos. FAN is also moving its headquarters to Lagos. They say this is for efficiency, to maximize utility, and so on and so forth. Clearly, from the government's point of view, this is based on an objective analysis of what needs to be done in the interest of the country. But clearly, the Arewa Consultative Forum disagrees. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, the way I see it, this is just a manifestation of a rumor that started 14 months ago. In early November 2012, there were rumors to the effect that if then aspiring president candidate Tinubu won the election, the Imperial Capital Territory was going to be relocated to Lagos. And I remember on the 30th of November, Bai Onanuga, my big brother, who was director media, I think, of the presidential campaign, issued a very strong worded statement condemning the rumor and those spreading it, assuring the nation that President Tinubu had no such plan. And he even called those circulating the rumor as he described them as being in the funeral of the PDP. It was so uncharitable at the time, and a lot of people felt it was just mere rumor, and they took it on its face value. And of course, northern Nigeria, even though had two candidates in Atiku Abubakar and Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, decided to vote for Tinubu. A majority of northerners voted for Tinubu,
at the expense of Rabi Kwankwaso and Atiku Abubakar, simply because they felt that fairness will demand that after 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari, a northerner, a southerner should take over. So predominantly because of those reasons, a lot of people in the north supported Bola Tinubu. The main reason, like I said, is unity of the country. There was a need after, the 8 years of Buhari that was seen to have divided the country. There was a need for the next president of the country to be a unifier. And the people felt that Tinubu was that kind of person. And after the rumor being dispelled about the relocation of the FCT to Lagos, a lot of people, like I said, took it on its face value, and on election day, they voted for Tinubu. Unfortunately, just about 7 months after taking over power, we are seeing the manifestations of the same rumor that started 14 months ago. It was denied, like I said, on the 30th of November, and now it's taking a life of its own. It started with the CBN, relocating almost half of its staff to Lagos, even though the circular talks about other outstations. But we have not heard of even one staff being transferred to any outstation. All of them, about 1,700, have been transferred to Lagos. And some key departments of the CBN also have been relocated to Lagos. Then 2 days later, Federal Airport Authority also did the same thing. It has since become a pattern. The Federal Ministry of Aviation has since been engaging in policies that seem to be anti-North. I don't know for what reason.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Well, it appointed, first of all, it terminated the appointments of directors and appointed new ones. In the new ones appointed, out of only about 18% are northerners. All the others are southerners. We shouldn't be talking about this north-south divide, in a country that seeks unity, But then, once these kind of things continue to happen, one is compelled to, to have to mention it. I have a background that is cosmopolitan, so I really hate talking about division. But unfortunately, the Ministry of Aviation under Festus Keyamo, a lawyer, a respected lawyer for that matter, seems to be engaging in a policy that is anti-North. So,
well, is there not a chance that just we have the right people in the right positions? They just don't happen to be North, and that is just the end of the story. It's not necessarily targeted at sidelining or marginalizing the northern part of the country.
Well, that is simplistic to say. Don't forget, there is a federal character principle that is should be applied in all appointments, across different sectors in the federation, be it aviation, be it agriculture, be it education, whichever sector. There is a need for federal character principle to be applied. So there is no way a larger segment of the Nigerian society, will be discriminated against, and the simplistic explanation of fairness or competence will not be brought to bear. I think it is wrong.
So, you think the Arewa Consultative Forum has a point to make here? Because this is just a decongestion effort in the best interest of the country. They tick all the boxes. Former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Kingsley Moghalu, attested to the fact that, listen, Abuja is saturated in terms of their CBN operations and they need to be decongestion. And we know Lagos is not just like any other state. We know what Lagos stands for economically speaking. It was the former capital of the country just some 3-4 decades ago. But give me your take as to, this political view versus the explanation that, the government is giving as to the reason why this move is happening now. Because this is not just the first time something like this has been put in the public domain.
Yeah, you are right. President Obasanjo started it. Just a few days after he assumed office in 1999, he moved the headquarters of the Nigerian Port Authority to Lagos. He also moved the headquarters.
And it made sense.
Well,
I mean, you don't have ports here in Abuja.
It does not matter.
Yeah, but you don't have ports here in Abuja, so it wouldn't make sense to have the Ports Authority in Abuja because the ports activities are in Lagos.
No, it's all about regulation. And regulation doesn't...
But why does everything have to be in... You go to the United States, not everything is concentrated in Washington, D.C. Not everything. I mean, and it's supposed to be, you know, where the capital is.
Well, you see, you have the right to decentralize. If we are talking about decentralization, then of course we should move the headquarters of NNPC to Port Harcourt or to Akwa Ibom, being the
Not
biggest oil
necessarily. I
producing
mean, if you look at the volatility there with regards to security and operations.
No, even Lagos is not that safe. If you are talking about security or volatility, it's not that safe.
I would say comparatively, Lagos is even safer compared to Abuja at the moment.
But except for the incidences of the last few days, Abuja has been the safest city in Nigeria. You know, there have been incidences.
Used to.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I said used to be the safest.
Yeah, that's what I said. That
Right.
Until the incidences of the last few days or few weeks, let me put it the last 2 weeks, so to say, or 3 weeks, because I remember the Nabiha kidnapping took place 19 days ago, and
before that there were several other issues. But I get your point.
But criminal activities also take place all over the country, and especially in Lagos.
I mean,
so
you're well traveled. You know of the opportunities, the economic opportunities, and the advantage, the comparative advantage that Lagos has over most states.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just like any other state, right? Is there a chance that because the president comes from Lagos, that's why people find it suspect? Because I imagine if Muhammadu Buhari, for instance, when he was in charge, had done this, it wouldn't be seen as something against the northern part of the country.
No, even when Muhammadu Buhari, under his leadership, some ministers located some key institutions in Daura, there have been criticisms. But then that one is different because those institutions are not as instrumental to the economy as the Federal Airport Authority or the Central Bank of Nigeria. So the reason why these criticisms are coming to fore simply have to do with the fact that these are institutions that are very instrumental to the economy of Nigeria. So, and talking about Lagos having some advantages, you are tilting, you know, you are widening the existing gap, economic gap between the north and the south, you know, by relocating everything to Lagos. Lagos already is the biggest.
I think it's just a few CBN
well, you see, this is just the beginning. Let's be very honest.
Right.
Probably, if God grants us life, in the next few months, we'll sit down here and talk about more ministries or presidents being relocated to Lagos. It's a pattern. It's a well-designed script that is being implemented. I'm telling you.
Okay, and you think it has something to do with an anti-northern agenda? You believe?
Definitely, I believe so. Okay. And I do not expect somebody like President Tinubu to continue to allow these things to happen.
Okay. Some people are screaming at their screens and saying, well, but IBB moved the capital from Lagos to Abuja, and you know, everybody had to deal with it. So maybe moving a few federal institutions back to Lagos is a fair balance.
Well, you see, sorry, I have to make a comment to that. IBB moved the federal capital from Lagos to Abuja because in 1976, the administration of late General Murtala Mohammed enacted a policy of relocating the federal capital to the center of the country for strategic reasons that have to do with security and accessibility. So IBB moving the nation's capital from Lagos to Abuja was never unilateral. It was in full accord with the law. Yeah, well, but this one is unilateral. They are just employing semantics, you know,
okay.
to try to...
I mean, you said strategic, you said security. They're also saying strategic and economically beneficial. But, you know, we see things differently. Talking about the unfortunate development that has happened over the past couple of weeks that has got a lot of Nigerians talking with regards to the security in the FCT. Nabia's sisters have regained their freedom, and we're all happy for it. It was a happy weekend. Other kidnapped victims were also released to their families after paying ransom. However, there's a twist to this story because the police is saying they rescued them, and the family is saying, no, we actually paid ransom and we had to wait for 2 days in suspense, not knowing what's going to happen until we got our sisters or children back. What are your thoughts first and foremost about, you know, how this whole development transpired, Nabiha was killed. 3 other victims were also killed when these kidnappers asked for ransom and they didn't get paid, the monies when they asked. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, we pray for the souls of the departed ones to rest in peace. And may their family also be comforted. It's a very monumental loss for anyone to lose his loved ones, especially on account of kidnapping. I know how heart-wrenching it could be. But this back and forth between the family and the police, I would rather align with the position of the Nigerian police. You understand? Because you see, even though some families do pay ransom, the reason why police insist ransoms are not paid is simply to discourage people from paying ransom, one. Secondly, to discourage people that are appealing maybe kidnapping is a way out of the economic difficulty they are facing, to kind of discourage them to feel that, okay, even if you kidnap someone, you could end up being arrested and without getting even a dime paid for your nefarious effort. So, but unfortunately, victim families always want to insist that ransom has been paid.
Always want to insist, or they're just stating the facts? Because Nabiha was killed because they couldn't raise the 60 million naira that the kidnappers asked for. And we saw a crowdfunding that included even the former minister of the federal capital that's asking for money as a result of that. So if you are saying the police is right, what happened to the kidnappers? If this was a rescue attempt, what happened to the kidnappers? Who did the police engage in before these sisters were released?
No, there have been instances where rescue efforts are successful without the perpetrators being arrested. Most likely, at a later time, they will be arrested, hopefully. But the most important thing has now been done. The fact that the victims have been rescued.
But isn't there a chance that the police is taking credit for what it didn't do?
It does not matter. It shouldn't matter.
I think it does.
No,
if we're interested in the truth, because the family say we paid ransom, that's what secured their release.
You see, it's not just about, there is one thing Nigerians need to know. This idea of hyphen kidnapping incidences and the ransom payments should be discouraged. I paid ransom in 2012, June 2012. You understand? Some family members were kidnapped, and it fell on me to pay the ransom, and I did pay the ransom. And this is the first time I'm mentioning it in the public fora. Yeah. You understand? You don't need
but
to.
How would you have felt if after paying ransom, the police said they saved your relative instead?
They did, and I didn't argue.
Yeah, but would that be, the honest thing? That, they're taking credit for what they didn't do?
No, it's not about taking credit. Like I told you, it's about discouraging the practice. It's not even a good thing, first of all, to pay ransom.
It's not ideal to pay ransom. I mean, people are paying through their teeth. It's not as if people have monies to pay ransom. But unfortunately, this is the reality. But if we don't admit that this is the reality, and we're saying that the police rescued, aren't we being economical with the truth here? Because
you see, it's like you being an editor, and maybe the kidnappers were able to kill, let's say, 100 people a day before publication, a newspaper publication. The following day, you are expected to publish that 100 people have been killed by kidnappers. Now, the police would now call you to say, okay, please, editor, downplay it to 10 people. And you ask them why. They will always tell you that publishing, saying it is 100 people will send jitters down the spine of a lot of people. A lot of people will be afraid and will start losing faith in the system. You understand? So for that, and secondly, the kidnappers or the criminals will feel more emboldened, to continue to do what they are doing, since that, okay, the whole country is, maybe they have not even counted the people they have killed.
Okay.
Maybe they are thinking they killed 50, and here you are confirming 100.
Okay.
So,
I think we're in the business of telling the truth, and regardless of what happens, we have to tell the truth no matter what. But then again, unfortunately, there are a lot of more stories I would love for us to talk about, but we are completely out of time. So we're going to have to leave it here for now. Alhaji Suleiman, thank you very much, as always, for your insight and for the analysis. Really appreciate you for stopping by, as always.
I really wish we had more time to
I really wish we do have more time also.